Hello and welcome to this week's edition of Income is the Outcome, where we believe it's not how much you earn, it's how much you keep. I'm your host, Kristin Oakley, and joining me in the studio is the founder and president of the Whistler Agency, Tim Whistler. We're so glad you're joining us today. You know, engaging in the comprehensive, holistic financial planning process means that you leave no stone unturned. And that's the perfect way to set up what we're going to be talking about today. We're going to be discussing some of the less known, less talked about challenges that retirees face and how you can navigate through those things successfully. Tim, my friend, always good to be here with you. How are you this week?
I'm doing well, Kristin. It's always great to be back here in the studio with you again this week.
Well, thank you. And I know that this is an important conversation we're going to have today. We're going to talk about a lot more than just the money aspects when it comes to retirement planning, right?
We sure are. There's a lot that goes into this formula, and it's important for us to discuss the details.
Yes. Well, the first challenge that we are going to be talking about on our list today is the concept of risk. And it's interesting because most people aren't even aware of how much risk they are actually taking with their investments. And so let's first talk about why that is and what you see when folks come in. Is that hold true? I mean, a lot of people are just not aware of how much risk they currently have.
You know, absolutely it is, because of the fact of, you think about all the years that they have been building wealth, right? They've got dollars inside of those buckets. The dollars are designed to grow and appreciate over time. There's going to be some fluctuations, of course.
Right.
But all of a sudden, they don't really realize how much risk they're taking until all of a sudden here comes a bad year. And as we get closer and closer to retirement, again, we've talked about this before, that 10-year critical period of time, that retirement red zone, 5 years prior to retirement, and then 5 years after, we want to make sure that we have really identified and mitigated risk, because it can be very, very damaging to those assets that are going to be earmarked for retirement. Because, I see this all the time. It's from the standpoint of people are just not getting good advice on helping them understand we have to make that transition from building our wealth now to taking distributions from our wealth.
And I know we have a very powerful image we're going to share in just a minute here that illustrates this point. But I think to what you were saying, that's the issue, right? A lot of folks don't understand what stage of life they might be in and how their risk needs to change accordingly. Because when you're younger, you're working, you're saving, you're putting that money away, you can afford to take more risk because you have time on your side. But as you get closer to retirement, like you said, that retirement red zone, that important shift needs to go ahead and happen where you dial back the risk, because time is no longer on your side in the same way. You need to be able to protect what you've accumulated to ensure that it's going to last you throughout the rest of your life, right?
Yes. I mean, it's not just, retirement's not just a physical transition. There's other things that have to be transitioning as well. And again, that whole adage, we don't know what we don't know.
Right.
We were very comfortable, we're maybe even, dare I say, confident about how we built our wealth over those years because we got used to that. We understood what our options were. We were comfortable with some ups and downs. We kind of liked when the market went down because we could buy more of the up.
Right, it's on sale. I love a good sale, right?
That's right.
Yes.
But all of a sudden now we come to retirement like, wait a second here. If all of a sudden now the market decides to turn the other way about the time we're getting ready to retire, that's when damage can be caused and it may not be repairable. So we want to make sure that we can do what we can to stay ahead of it so that we're helping to transition again from building wealth, return on investment, over to the different ROI in retirement that we'll talk about here in a second.
Yes, okay, that reliability of income. And I know that you have a very powerful image that you often walk folks through when they come in to meet with you for the first time. We want to share it with our viewers now. What are we looking at here? Explain this.
So envision your financial life broken down in two phases, and determining that you're actually climbing a mountain. Okay, I'm not a mountain climber. I never will be a mountain climber. But I read years ago that 80% of mountain climbing accidents occur on the way down.
Yes.
How true can that be in our financial life? So what you're looking here, as you ascend the mountain, you're going through that first phase on the left-hand side of the page called the accumulation phase. Those are your working years. And your biggest challenge during those years is simply saving as much as you can for retirement. Then here comes that magical milestone of your life, retirement. That's when you put the flag at the mountaintop, you celebrate. Now you get to transition to this next distribution, this next phase, which is called the distribution phase. Now here, all of a sudden, there's a few more challenges that pop up that maybe we weren't even aware of during the building wealth period of time. And that's what we have to talk about. We have to talk about how do we protect, identify, and making sure that we mitigate these challenges to the best of our ability. Because again, as you look at the bottom of the screen, this is where a lot of people are not getting the right advice. The ROI during your accumulation phase is all about return on investment. Why? Because what are we doing? We're accumulating as much wealth as we can. But as soon as we retire and we transition to that distribution phase, Yes, there is still an ROI, but now it's all about reliability of income. And we cannot stress that point enough. When you come in and meet with us, your portfolio, as I would expect, is going to be geared towards the accumulation phase. That's not meaning that it's wrong. It simply means it's not ready for the next phase of life. And that's what our job is. Our job is to make sure we identify those different challenges you saw there on the screen and create the ROI for you at this phase of life called reliability of income.
Yes. And I think too, a lot of folks aren't even aware of how much risk they're currently taking. They're not aware of what they're currently invested in. And often this can go back to your very first job. I mean, a quick funny story. So my husband is a public school teacher, and years ago when we first got together, I was looking through his 403B and I said, well, babe, how did you pick what you're currently invested in, And he said, well, I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't understand what the guy said. So I just looked at the person next to me and put down whatever was on his paper, right? And a lot of people, they do that and then they don't know. And all of a sudden, fast forward, now it's time to retire. They're not aware of what they have. They're not aware of this transition and this shift that needs to occur. That presents a problem from a risk perspective for sure.
Absolutely. And to your point, before my own practice back in 2004, I was in corporate America for 12 years, and I had the exact same conversation. I'd call across the cubicle to my buddy, hey, what did you put your 401k into? Well, that sounds good. I'll do the same thing.
Exactly.
That was the best advice we were given back then, right? And again, I find a lot of people are in that exact same situation. So, there are some options available where now all of a sudden you see target funds being pretty popular.
Those TDFs, target date funds.
That's exactly right. So in other words, when you're looking at you're looking at current year of 2025, and let's say you're 30 years away from retirement, right? First job out of college, you're like, that's a long way away. I might want to be in a target fund that's maybe 2055, 2060.
Right, which means the year you're planning to retire.
That's exactly right. That's the target when you're going to retire. So in other words, that portfolio is aligned to have a little bit more risk involved. We might have more in equities, we might have less in bonds, but as we get closer to retirement, that target date now becomes a little bit more closer on the horizon. And where that can sometimes still damage some folks is you look at what the bond market has done in the past. And I just brought a sheet here, just first quarter of 2025. One of the most popular bond funds that we have access to is from American funds, the Bond Fund of America. And I'm not trying to trying to highlight them in a negative way.
Right.
Just simply saying the average 10-year return is 1.25. So all of a sudden, that's where I say to people, sometimes those target date funds may not necessarily be the right allocation either.
Right.
Because it may not, it's the whole adage of 60-40 stocks to bonds back in the mid-90s, the 4% withdrawal rate. Times are different.
Yeah, well, and just to put that in perspective, my brain is still processing that. Over 10 years, the average return, 1.25%. We think of where inflation has been over the last few years. I mean, that's not even keeping up anywhere remotely with that, right?
Right. So now all of a sudden we run the risk of not only exposing our dollars maybe to this market volatility,
right.
Now we've also exposed some of our dollars to not even keeping up with inflation.
I call that going broke safely, right?
That's exactly what it is. Yep,
yeah.
That's right.
For sure. Well, and I think this is too, when folks don't adjust their risk, how much they're taking with their investments, this is why so many people were completely decimated and devastated by 2008, because at that point, a lot of folks had just maybe left a lot of their money in the stock portion of their portfolio. Overnight, when that took a huge hit, now they lost so much of their retirement savings. I mean, that was really devastating.
It was, and that's why, again, we cannot emphasize enough, as we start to really put retirement on your calendar, there must be a reallocation of your portfolio. We have to understand that we need no longer to chase yields, but we need to start focusing on eliminating volatility. So therefore, how do we do that? Well, your portfolio is already diversified. We've covered that. We're good there.
Right.
Now we have to create balance. And how do we create balance? That's when we have the conversation. We look at the assets. We look at the income. We make sure we account for all the expenses, paying off any liabilities. And now we create an income plan, not really focused so much more on return on investment, but again, reliability of income.
Yes, so important to make that shift with that ROI. One last question I do want to ask you on this subject of risk, because I know you work with a lot of single individuals, but you also work with a lot of married couples. And I know that typically God has a sense of humor. He often puts two people together who have different perspectives on things and might have different risk tolerances. So how do you help couples navigate through that?
That's when I have to kind of take off the advisor hat and put on the psychiatrist hat a little bit, jokingly, of course. But again, I want, the opportunity to meet with both husband and wife. When we're dealing with a household of husband and wife together, again, we've talked about this before. One of the two normally kind of wears the hat. They're the quarterback. They're kind of in charge of the finances, making the decisions, and that's fine. We expect to see that. What I want to make sure is that, again, to your point, Kristin, Risk is going to be completely different between the two. Security is going to mean something completely different.
Right.
You know, it's like when we sit down and we look at the analysis, some people want to simply know, am I going to be okay? In other words, using the analogy of a clock, what time is it? Are we going to be okay?
Right.
The other one's like, well, I want to see how the clock is built.
Right. I want to see how this works. Yeah.
Exactly right. So that way, you know, that's why I encourage folks to come in together, husband and wife together, making sure that we've addressed risks, we've addressed concerns, and making sure, again, we can provide a document, a roadmap, if you will, that empowers husband and wife both, so they can both step into retirement with confidence and know they've got the roadmap and they've got the guide to walk right alongside of them throughout the retirement years.
And that's in the form of the complimentary written financial plan.
That's what it is.
Awesome. Well, if any of this is resonating with you, if you know that you would like to take a look at what you're currently invested in and receive this roadmap for you so that you can successfully navigate through this important transition that needs to occur as you approach and enter retirement, this is why Tim and the team of Whistler Agency would love to be able to provide you the opportunity to come in and for no cost, no charge, no obligation, receive your very own complimentary written financial plan. To claim yours, simply call 888-992-7829, or you're welcome to scan that QR code and that will get you connected as well. Stay with us. We're going to be addressing some other important transitions and changes that you need to be aware of and prepared for with your retirement right after this.
Good morning, Ben.
Good morning, Ben. Hey, birthday party for Carol and 5. Happy birthday to you.
Good morning, Ben. Happy Monday.
Daryl's birthday, be there or be square. Happy birthday to you. As you can see from our quarterly report on slide number 62, we're trending in the right direction. All signs point to a very positive outlook for the next several years. If you peel back the onion...
Ben, do you have anything to add?
The work never seems to end until the day it finally does. Call today to get your free written financial plan so you may live every day to the fullest and enjoy the retirement of your dreams.
Well, welcome back to Income is the Outcome. I'm Kristin Oakley here with Tim Whistler, the founder and president of the Whistler Agency. We're so glad you're joining us today. If you're just tuning in, Tim and I are discussing several of the different transitions and changes that folks need to be aware of and prepared for if they want to navigate through retirement successfully. And as one of my mentors always said, personal finance is often more personal than finance. And that means that we also need to talk about the emotional transition that happens. This is huge, and I think it's something that doesn't get talked about enough in our industry, is the psychological changes and transitions that come with entering into retirement. And this is something that you address with your clients. So I'd love to hear your take on that.
You know, this is something as I've gone through my advanced training through the years, you know, maintaining my designations, earning the designations that I have, they really keyed in on the emotions of it, making sure that we as an advisor not just address the numbers, but what's behind the numbers. You know, because these numbers are an emotional response to people, but all of a sudden now you disrupt their life.
Right.
They're disrupting their lives from, you know what, I'm no longer getting up 5 days a week, 6 days a week, going to my job, and that's because that fulfills my purpose. Now I'm retired. Well, all of a sudden, that's not just a physical transition, it's also an emotional transition. Have we saved enough?
Yep.
Am I doing the right thing? Am I going to be able to survive on our savings? Is Social Security going to be okay? That's emotional. And there comes some doubts, here comes some fears, here comes some worries. And if you feel that way, don't feel like you're alone. This is common, and it's to be expected. You've never walked this journey before. How in the world can we possibly know everything we need to know about a journey we've never taken before? So it's understandable that there's some emotions involved, but that's not where the story ends. We can certainly identify and address those. We want to empathize with the emotions, but then all of a sudden we can make a transition. It's always fun to see how that emotional transition also occurs as soon as that roadmap appears.
And I bet too that a huge part of your job is helping folks dream again. It's almost like, I think sometimes folks need permission to dream again when you've worked so hard and your life has been so tied to your career. And there's nothing wrong with that, but a lot of times folks' identity is very wrapped up in what they do, that they haven't even thought about what could happen, what they're transitioning to is probably a good way to say it, right?
Absolutely. I mean, there's people, I can think of a couple of clients right now who say, you know what, I could afford to retire. I don't really want to. I love what I do.
Right.
I'm like,
right.
I can relate to that. I understand that completely.
Yep.
Then there's other people like, I cannot wait to get the heck out of there. I'm done. I'm spent. I'm emotionally done. I'm physically done. I just want out.
Right.
So they're exactly right. So there has to be a transition in focus, in purpose. And that's, again, part of the overall conversation that we have with folks when they come in for that first time, is to say, let's talk to the numbers, but let me understand a little bit more about you. What is behind the numbers? Who is behind the numbers? What do these numbers mean to you? Because what I'm looking for is I want to make sure that they have also made the transition emotionally for finding purpose for each day in retirement. That is critical.
Yes, it is so much more than just the financial aspect.
Right.
I mean, studies show, and I have some notes here, that these emotional changes can include uncertainty, anxiety, loss of identity, loss of social connections, loss of structure, shame and guilt, feelings of irrelevance. And I can imagine if a person is experiencing all of those things, and then on top of that, they don't even have a financial plan to address the financial aspects. I mean, talk about a double whammy. It's no wonder a lot of folks really struggle with making this transition and doing it well.
Oh, well said. That's exactly what it is. Because again, we've never walked this before. We have numbers all over the place, but we don't have a plan. We don't know, are these numbers going to be enough? And it's again, that's where those emotional, characteristics that you just described can come into play. And it's like, once we have the ability to sit down and understand that there is a plan, we can execute what we want to do because we've looked at the numbers. There's a famous saying I always like to share: when the vision is clear, the decision is easy. If you just think about that, let that marinate for a second. If we go through the proper channels, the proper steps, to have enough meetings, the conversations with the appropriate and qualified fiduciary who can help you through create a retirement income plan, now all of a sudden we can start transitioning those emotions to the other side. Some confidence, some reliability, some excitement. We can dream again because now we have a plan in place. And that's what the plan is designed to do. The plan breeds confidence.
Yes, I love that. When the vision is clear, the decision becomes easy, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. But I can imagine too, for folks who might be feeling overwhelmed by all this, it's a lot of transition. It's a lot of change at once. Then you retire, right? But that doesn't mean that life stops. Life still happens. And it's so important to have that plan in place before those unexpected events occur.
That's right. And that's why, again, that's why we have the show. That's why we have the podcast. That's why we wrote the book. It's to let you know that we're here. You're not alone in this journey. We want to help you, empower you, give you the confidence that you can enjoy retirement that you've dreamed of. And all that starts is with a conversation. Just reach out to a member of our team. They'll find a time that fits for you on your calendar. It works for our calendar as well. We'll have the get acquainted conversation. Then we can evolve into the initial analysis, and we can kind of build it from there to help you transition from those negative emotions now to the feeling of empowerment and confidence.
Wonderful. Tim, thank you so much. And not only can folks meet with you in person, but they can meet with you via Zoom as well, right?
We sure can.
Yes. So no matter where you're watching, if you are watching this show right now, know that Tim and the team of the Whistler Agency would love to be able to help and serve you. Again, this is for no cost, no charge, no obligation. It's simply an invitation to have a conversation to see how they can help and serve you. Not only will you be able to receive your very own complimentary written financial plan, but Tim, you mentioned your book, and I know you were more than happy to also give folks a complimentary copy of Tim's book, License to Spend, a retirement plan based on income, not IFCOM. So you will be able to receive that on top of the plan by calling 888-992-7829. Or again, you're also welcome to scan that QR code and that will get you connected as well. Stay with us. We have some more changes and transitions we're going to discuss right after this.
When you start hearing more stories about their grandkids or the birth of another grandchild, to now they start sharing stories about how they're taking care of mom or dad, you start to become part of their family. The relationship kind of builds naturally. We meet on a regular basis. They've got my cell phone number. They can email me. They can text me if there's anything comes to mind. Whatever the case is, you start to you continue to build that relationship. And what a joy that is whenever somebody calls in and asks, how are you doing? How's Rhonda doing? You become part of a family together, and it becomes very, very, very personable. And every day, get to go to my office and sit down and just look at my clients' databases. I can see who's having birthdays today. And then for them to kind of share with you the joy of having that plan, the joy of having that advisor, that counselor that'll walk right alongside of them through all the years into retirement. I just want to make sure as the years unfold that we just continue to build on the growth and just kind of keep the practice running on solid ground and continue to provide service to clients.
Welcome back to Income is the Outcome. I'm Kristin Oakley here with Tim Whistler, where today we are discussing several of the transitions and changes that folks need to be prepared for in order to navigate to and through retirement successfully. Often some of the things that are overlooked or not talked about enough, in our opinion, right, Tim, here in the financial industry, because it is so much more than just about the money. There's an emotional transition that's occurring, psychological things are happening, and you really do work hard to make sure that your clients can retire well in all aspects of their lives. That's
right. You know, the act of retirement's simple. You just stop working, stop showing up, give your 2 weeks notice and retire. But the science behind retirement, there's a lot into this formula. So we want to make sure that we unpack it all, uncover it, the emotion, the risk, the income. How do we transition all of that and create purpose with what we want to do in retirement?
Yes, and having that plan can really help provide that stability throughout all this transition and change, which I don't know about you, I am a person who tends to be a little more change resistant, although I feel like God's had a sense of humor with me and has had me go through multiple changes throughout life, right? Yep. It's part of the growth process. But
I think so, yeah, been there, done that too.
Yeah, for sure. But even though this might be, of course, you only get to retire one time, Tim has helped hundreds of folks retire successfully throughout Central Illinois, and he has seen this, walked this path. You know what to anticipate and help your folks, navigate through. That also leads to the biggest transition that ends up happening, which is a lot of times later on in life, folks are concerned about leaving a legacy. And it is so important to make sure that your legacy planning, your estate planning is in order for the loved ones that you're going to be leaving behind. Let's talk about that transition.
Absolutely. It's a good point. I think everybody needs to understand, I think it's a good reminder, we're all going to leave a legacy. Is there a purpose behind it, or is it just whatever's left behind? That's fine, right? We're always going to have a legacy. So that's one of the part of the conversations, or one of the questions I should say, in the conversation I have, is what's the legacy plan look like? Because some folks come in with a plan. Look, we've got kids, we've got grandkids. We want to kind of maybe pass along some dollars to them, and ultimately also get the ones where we say, you know what? We paid for college for our kids. Right. This is our time. Yep. Right. They're going to get whatever's left over, and that's what
we want the last check to bounce.
That's
right.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
So I see everything in between. The point of it is we want to address it. Right. We're not here to judge what the legacy plan looks like. We want to make sure that there is one, and especially for clients who have dollars that are tax deferred. You have to understand that just because the IRA owner changes doesn't mean the IRS goes away. They will latch themselves onto that dollar. So if a husband and wife are in retirement together, one spouse passes away, the surviving spouse now takes over that IRA account, and then they pass away, and there's still IRA dollars in that bucket. Guess what happens? The IRS now attaches onto the dollars that you want to leave behind for your kids. So that's why it's imperative for us to talk through that and figure out what's the most tax efficient way when we want to transition dollars from mom and dad to the kids as part of that overall legacy plan.
Yep, for sure. And there's so much that goes into that. The rules have changed a lot recently. A lot of folks aren't even aware of the stretch IRA provision, for example, having been eliminated. That creates some more complications that need to be navigated through.
It does. And again, it's part of the overall plan. Again, we're not an attorney, but I always ask the question, do you have a will? Do you have a trust? Do you have neither? That's okay. That way then we can at least identify them before that actually becomes reality. Right. Because again, just to Kristin's point, because of recent legislation changes, that's what we call legislation risk. You're going to face it. It's a matter of time. And again, that's why I'm so empowered to be able to share with folks. That's why I'm a part of that Ed Slott Elite IRA Advisor Group. Going to those 2 workshops every year, having access to a website full of a plethora of information is to make sure that I can make sure that you are kept abreast of what's going on legislative-wise, because if all of a sudden Congress changes things, it could completely disrupt what we may have planned for our estate.
Yes. Yeah.
And especially when it comes to, like Kristin said, the stretch IRA is gone. It's no longer accessible. So now we can start talking through how do we properly plan a tax-efficient legacy for the kids, especially if we have tax-deferred dollars that we're going to pass on to them.
Right. And if I can brag on you for a second, that designation is no joke. I know how hard you work and how much training goes into being a master elite advisor with Ed Slott and all that entails. And I believe you're one of the only ones in this area too, right?
I believe there's just a couple. I think there might have been
Yeah.
somebody else who recently joined, and I'm thankful for that. We
Yeah.
need more advisors who take this advanced training, because the fact that's exactly what it is. It's not easy. It's not actually joyful to sit through a day and a half of talking about nothing but the IRS.
Right.
But
with a book this thick, I might add, right?
Yeah, and then having to take an exam afterwards.
Yes.
But it's required. I firmly will say it's demanded of us. If we are going to be held to a fiduciary responsibility and be held to the calling of serving you, we better be on top of our game to make sure that you understand that there are options available, but more importantly, that there's also things we need to address prior to them occurring and catching us off guard.
For sure, which brings me to my next point. We can't have a legacy plan if we don't even have a financial plan in place, right? And so I think sometimes folks can feel very overwhelmed by this. They can procrastinate. Maybe it's something you've been putting off. If somebody's watching today and they're like, yeah, that's me. I know I need to do these things. I haven't wanted to think about it. I've been so busy with my work or my career, but maybe this has sparked something of realizing, okay, there's several transitions and changes that I need to start preparing myself for even now. What would you say to them?
I'd say, first of all, you're not alone. You are not alone. No, again, it's from the standpoint of nobody understands what this journey is going to look like because we've not walked it before, and that's okay. That's why we're here. So we're going to walk through that get acquainted conversation together. There's going to be a checklist provided to you so you know what documents to bring in for that first conversation. And then if you find it appropriate to come back for that next conversation, that's where we can provide you with what we call that initial analysis. That is there where you can basically judge us. You can grade us. Is this the plan that might fit and address your concerns? Is this the plan that's going to give you that peace of mind to make that emotional and physical transition from your accumulation phase to the distribution phase? Is this the plan that's going to generate the income we need in the most tax efficient manner? And then once we've established a good foundation, that is the key to all of this. Once the foundation is set, now we can start talking tax planning, legacy planning, Social Security optimization, and that might include, maybe we need to meet with an estate planning attorney. Maybe we need to get the will updated. Maybe there needs to be a trust involved. The point of it is, it's not overwhelming when there's purpose and there's a plan behind it, and that's what we're here to do for you.
Wonderful. I'm excited for more folks to connect with you. As we were talking before today's show, I know you love seeing that sigh of relief that happens when folks are able to leave your office having that solid plan in place. So Tim, thank you so much. To our viewers at home, thank you so much for watching, and we encourage you to reach out. As Tim said, you are not alone. While a lot of this might be new to you, it's not new to Tim and the team of the Whistler Agency, and they would love to be able to help and serve you. 888-992-7829 is the number to call, or again, you're welcome to scan that QR code. Be safe, be happy, be blessed, and we look forward to being back with you next time here on Income is the Outcome.